All right, guys, I'm excited about this one. Today we're talking with Jen Fulwiler. She's a stand-up comedian, a best-selling author, and the mom of, get ready for this, 6 kids. Check this out. She is a total dream think doer because after being told that no one would be interested in comedy done by a minivan driving woman from the suburbs, she self-produced her own stand-up comedy tour and sold out venues literally across the country. How cool is that? She's written several books, and her newest book is called The Blue Flame: Drop the Guilt and Do What Makes You Come Alive. It was just released in April. The book has received rave reviews and has helped people to break out of ruts, uncover their personal passions as well as their unique gifts and talents, and most importantly, fall in love with their life again, which is no small order, but I think it's wildly important. It's a critical message for this weird, wild season that we're in. So we're going to be diving into some of Jen's stories, some of her strategies to help you figure out your blue flame and get to walk that out more too. And just so you know, for those keeping track, Jen lives in a 3-bedroom house with her husband. There's 6, did I mention 6 kids? A huge dog and a one-eyed cat in Austin, Texas. Can you tell why I'm excited? Let's get to this. Jen, welcome to Dream Think Do.
I am so excited to be here. This is going to be so much fun.
It is going to be fun. Okay, so as we record this, things are kind of starting to open up, but it's still kind of weird. How are you doing with 6 kids in a house and all of this wildness?
You know, I will say, just with everything we've been through here in 2020, I am every single day, it is a new practice for me to just try to go with the change, see the positive in new circumstances. And Mitch, I think I've heard you say before that you kind of shared this tendency that I have of you get your plans and you want your plans to be perfect. And when the plans get messed up, you're like, but I had a plan.
Like, but it was a perfect plan. You should have seen it was color coded.
Right, yeah. Right. Yes, I had the Excel spreadsheet with conditional formatting.
It was gorgeous.
It. Right. And so I've been on a journey in 2020, a journey of letting go of my plans and seeing that when things don't go my way, if I will look for the benefit that can come of it, if I will look for the positive, a lot of times really beautiful things come of it. But if I insist on fixating on the way things are supposed to be according to my plan, I miss those opportunities. Yeah. So every day right now is a chance for me to encounter that once again.
That is an awesome perspective. It's a great way to look at it. It's the only way to stay sane. Plus, I would think as a comedian, oh my gosh, right, this year, I mean, I know you are actually one of the few people that's really been able to make great humor and I think in many ways, hopeful humor out of all this. And you put out some great videos on Twitter, on Instagram, all of that. So I love that. So we're going to talk about your new book here in a second, Your Blue Flame, which I love, but we got to dive into this comedy tour idea because as you can imagine with Dream Think Doers, we've got a lot of people with big ideas and oftentimes they're going to hear the naysayers, right? Like, you can't do that. Who are you to try to pull that off? You don't have, fill in the blank. And this is totally the story of you and this comedy tour. So walk us through this just a little bit. You're a comedian, you're killing it, but you're like, I want to do something bigger. And it was up to you.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I got into stand-up because I had an existing fan base and they kept saying, hey, Jen, because I'm like you, I have that dream, think, do mentality. I would always encourage people on my radio show and in the writing that I do. And what the feedback I was hearing from my fan base was, yeah, Jen, that encouragement is nice, but when you actually make us feel better is when you are being funny. Like, that's what we want from you. So could you cut this a little bit and like actually try to be funny? So I sort of jumped into stand-up comedy relatively spontaneously. I started going down to the clubs and none of these guys knew who I was. I'd be the only woman getting up on stage. Mitch, I would bomb all the time. And whatever you think it might be like to be in a dive bar where, as with me, like I'm the only woman, and I'm telling jokes, and you hear like the clinking of the glasses at the bar where there should be the sound of laughter.
Right.
It's 1,000 times worse than anything you're imagining that experience might be.
I'll
So
never forget Robert De Niro talking about when he did the role of a stand-up comedian. He said, he went and did the same thing, right? This is Robert De Niro, who looks like the most confident person on the planet. And he said it's the hardest thing he's ever done. He couldn't wait for it to be over, all of that. So I can just imagine, especially as a mom of 6, you're probably not cussing a blue streak on stage, all this kind of stuff. So like, I can only imagine you had to stay true to this.
That's a great insight, Mitch, that not only was I the only female, I was the only clean comic, because I was working out material that I can do for people who are in the suburbs. They don't want to hear me dropping F-bombs every other word. So I only clean comic, only female. And I just slogged it out. Like after the kids went to bed, I'd go down to these comedy clubs, get put on a show at 11:30 p.m., have people ignore me. They're checking their watches when they're supposed to be laughing. But you know what I'm sure you're familiar with James Clear. He has a great quote where he says, "What is an area of life where you can handle the pain of the work better than the people around you?" And James Clear says, that is the work you were meant to do. And I think that's a brilliant insight. I want people to write that down. I think it's a great insight.
Repeat that. That's tweetable there.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it? That's what I thought. That was my first thought. Always goes to Twitter.
I can get that in a tweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Where is an area of life where you can handle the pain of the work better than the people around you? Wow. That is the work you were meant to do. Because when you think about it, any kind of work comes with pain. My friend is super into gardening. You get me out in a garden for 30 seconds, I'm going to be swearing. I use language that would make a pirate blush. Like I'd be like sweating and my hair's getting messed up and like I can't handle the pain of gardening for 30 seconds. Now my friend who's a gardener, she doesn't want to get up on a stand-up comedy stage and bomb. And so it was actually through the bombing, the fact that I was like, okay, that was 1,000 times worse than I ever imagined it would be. That was emotionally devastating, and I can't wait to do it again. And when I had that reaction, I said, I think I found the work I was meant to do. And so I started calling clubs and stuff. And at that point, I'd stopped bombing. I had a really good highlight reel. The response I was getting is people said, this is solid comedy, Jen. It really is. But we don't think that like people with kids, you're talking about minivans, having kids, stuff like that. We just don't think these people will show up for comedy shows. We don't think there's a market for what you're doing. Wow. And I hung up the phone and I went to Google and I Googled rent theater in Atlanta, Georgia. And I cold called this theater. And long story short, I booked a 13-city tour and almost every single venue sold out.
Incredible. And this is fresh. Like this just
happened.
It
just happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's wild about it too, and then we could probably get into a whole hour-long conversation about this, but you had the nudge that you had this window to do this in. You did it, and basically your last date was a couple of weeks before or right around
it
shutdown time.
Yes. And so by the way, 1 year ago today, I had not even started planning the tour. So this came together. I had not called one theater 1 year ago today. And so it came together pretty quickly. And at the time I was finishing the manuscript of the book that has just been released. I was finishing Your Blue Flame. And the conventional wisdom was, don't rush. I cannot tell you, Mitch, how many people said, Jen, you've got 6 kids, a 2-hour.
Did we mention the 6 children?
Right, yeah. Well, and a 2-hour live daily talk show on Sirius XM. I do talk radio. I'm a solo host. I don't have a co-host. So it's like day after I'm on the air live for 2 hours a day, every day, and all the kids, and I'm working on this manuscript. Everybody said, don't do the tour now. Just wait. The tour will still be. Everyone's like, live events will always be there, Jen. What could possibly happen to live events? And you and I talked about this before we started recording here, that we have both found over and over again, when you feel an inspiration that you need to do something and you need to do it now, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know what the future holds, but you need to just do it. And I'm so glad that I did the tour when I did, even though I was working like 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for a few months there.
Wow. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. I love it. And I mean, again, there's just 1,000 questions because I do think I know your kiddos because you had 6 within 8 years, right? I know that math, but I don't know the age range.
Currently, the age range is 15 down to 7.
Holy moly. So what I love about this though is, and this is a little bit biased, but your kids, you're raising your kids weird, right? Like your kids are only going to know pursuing that, right? Like they're not going to know humdrum, just another day, another dollar. Like they're going to know, hey, we were put here for a reason, walk that reason out. It's not easy, but when you do that, you know, it really does make for an amazing life. And they're not just hearing people tell them that, they're seeing you guys do that.
Well, and I bring them into it. And that's one of my key tips for parents. And by the way, this is a very interesting thing. I think you'll find this very interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that comedians always have is you have to work out your material. Just because it's funny on paper does not mean an audience will laugh at it. Boy, have I learned that one the hard way. Out of necessity, I can't hit the comedy clubs as much as my peers can, because you know, I'm a mom. Like I just can't do that as much. And I was feeling stressed out about that. I was tempted to despair. But then I thought, you know, my kids are actually really funny. Like they tend to connect with humor. So I started doing what I call garage comedy. I had neighbors come over. I had my babysitter there. I had the kids there. I would gather them all in the garage. I would run my material through them. And yet it did involve exposing my kids to some jokes that are a little on the line, wouldn't normally do. But I thought, you know what, this is the trade-off. Yes, they are hearing some jokes that have mature topics, but on the other hand, they feel very intimately a part of what mom is doing. And so, you know what's crazy, Mitch? So I would do the jokes in front of my kids. My kids would laugh at the exact same places as regular Austin, Texas comedy club audiences would laugh. And I had this great epiphany when I realized, oh yeah, I guess a drunk comedy club audience is at the mental level of a 5th grader. And so if my 5th grader is hilarious, the drunk guys at the dive bar are going to laugh too. So I want everyone, whatever work they do, to take this lesson away. A lot of times your greatest disadvantage, if you just sit with it and explore the other side of it, could very well turn into your greatest advantage. Because think about it, during quarantine, I've been able to keep working out my material.
Right.
I've got my 6 audience members there in the garage, whereas other comedians who don't have kids, they have no audience to work out their material with. So my greatest disadvantage, having 6 kids, turned into my greatest advantage in this work.
I love it. And it is all perspective. And I think it's also, what I love about that too is, well, in some ways, I mean, a 7-year-old or a 5th grader, whatever, I think in some ways, if you can make them laugh, especially if it's your own child, that's like the toughest audience on the planet, right? Yeah. So, heck, a drunk guy in downtown Austin, easy, right?
Right.
Oh
that's
my
the scariest set I ever do is have my kids sitting there with their arms.
Bring it on, Mom. You just made us do chores.
She's funny again. Like, Mitch, I would go down to a biker bar and do stand-up comedy in front of them. Like, that is not intimidating. I've got teens. I've got tweens. Can you imagine trying to get them to think mom
God bless you. God bless you. And I just say, here's a little tip that we've learned. Our boys are 19 and 21. We just have a little account that's set aside for counseling because we know we've screwed them up. It's just a little bit every month that goes in there. You know, it's like, hey, boys, go use the counseling budget. It's fine.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, I love it. Okay, gosh, I'm so glad we've got 4 hours for our conversation today. This
Good, right?
All right, so I want to stay on this, but we got to get over to the book because I'm loving the book, Your Blue Flame. I know that the concept, Your Blue Flame, because when I heard about the book, I'm like, what does that even mean? I love the story. You're sitting with a very famous author. And this idea comes up. So let's hear a little story of the Blue Flame and what it actually is.
Okay, so your Blue Flame is a gift it was given to you. You know, I believe it's a God-given gift. My atheist friends would say it's an inherent gift, but it's a gift or talent that was given to you that you were meant to use. So there's kind of a sense of destiny attached to it. And it gives you energy when you do it. And so it fills you up. You have more energy when you're done doing this work than before you began. Yep. And then here's the key thing. It serves others. It builds
Yeah.
up the world. So getting a mani-pedi is not
Although
a
delightful.
You might enjoy it, but
Totally delightful.
yeah. The other day I was like, I think my blue flame is drinking gin and tonic. Like, but no,
That's right. I kill it at that.
Right now. Right now, if I learned how to make gin and tonics for other people,
Oh,
that
yeah.
could be a blue flame.
There it
has
is,
to
helping
serve-
the world.
has to serve
Absolutely.
other people. Yeah. But the key thing for me, having 6 babies in 8 years, is like when I started writing, that my blue flame is communication, sort of broadly defined. So when I first started writing, everybody, I had 3 kids under age 3 and I was pregnant. And that's when I started writing my first book. And everyone said, Jen, why would you add more work to your life? You're so overwhelmed. And I didn't have the lexicon to fully articulate this, but what I wish I could have said at the time is, guys, this is my blue flame.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm doing this writing work is what keeps me going each day. I would have lost my mind. I'm an only child. My husband's an only child. I don't know anything about raising a big family. I would have lost my mind if I didn't have this blue flame work to fill me with energy.
And that outlet, all those things. So not to say that it's easy, but it's that work that's enriching, that feels right. Like you say, you get energized from it. You're better off on the other side. What I also love, there's a number of things that I love about the concept, but one of the things that I think you differentiate on that's wildly important is we're not talking about a role or a title.
Right.
We're talking about a talent or a skill. So talk us through that a little bit. Cause I know, you even go after, like some people might say, oh, I'm a mom or I'm a dad. That's my blue flame. You would disagree. You would differentiate. So walk us through that.
Right. Because for example, you wouldn't say, if someone says, what's your blue flame? Somebody wouldn't say it's being a niece, because that defines your role in a relationship. And I would say that's too sacred to conflate with the work that comes with it. So being a mom it's a sacred role. Being a dad is a sacred role. Now your blue flame might be related to that. Yeah. So for example, I know a woman, she stays home with her kids and she'd always enjoyed baking. But after she read the book, she said, you know what? I realized that this is my blue flame. And the transformation that she went through in her mind that took it from just a hobby to a blue flame is that she connected with that sense of mission. And she said, maybe this is a bigger deal than I thought it was. I mean, she said, I used to discount the fact that I really love decorating cookies. It seems just so silly and unimportant. But she said, now that I've connected with this lexicon of having a blue flame and what it means, she said, I've started baking these elaborately decorated cookies and dropping them off with people in my neighborhood. Like her neighbor just got laid off and he's devastated, like they're facing bankruptcy. It's a really bad situation. And once a week she does silly cookies, some of them that were decorated like in funny, a little bit inappropriate ways, but she'll drop them off to just make him laugh and just make his wife laugh and give them a little joy. And she said, wow, that just, the blue flame concept took what I thought was a silly hobby that didn't matter. And suddenly I feel like I'm a superhero with a mission.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that also helps to open up something. And I think in that case, just to kind of drill down there, like in that case, it maybe is not even the baking specifically, it's using, baking as a creative outlet to then be able to help and encourage others. Right. So I love that. And I also think that it's really important to differentiate that in some cases, the blue flame could be your work or your employment. And sometimes the blue flame could be something that you do, but it's not necessarily tied to a job.
Yes, just like it's important to separate the blue flame concept from your role in your family, as we just talked about, it's also important to separate the blue flame concept from how you make your money. Now, some of us are lucky enough that we have been able to build careers in which we make money from our blue flame. Right. But in the book, I give the example of my grandfather. His blue flame was being an engineer. He built refineries. He would oversee the construction of refineries, and he loved everything about it. He loved the construction of it. He loved the management, but he got hepatitis from bad seafood when he was 52. The doctors gave him up for dead. He barely survived, but his career was over. He could not go back to, walking around these big refinery construction projects. So if he had conflated the blue flame work of being an engineer with the way he made his money and with his identity, he would have been psychologically devastated. He would have said, my best years are behind me. Yeah, it's over. Well, what he ended up doing was he would use his engineering skills to create all of these amazing things. Like Mitch, he created this grill. He had multiple grills and cookers. We could have sold these things for thousands of dollars. He went to the hardware store. He got all the parts. He made a hot dog roasting thing that you like what do you call it? They rotate.
Yeah, the rotator
rotisserie.
thing.
Yeah,
Rotisserie. There it
rotisserie.
is. Yes, exactly.
And just to amuse me, he created a little ant stick figure, and the ant's hands were attached to the edge of the rotisserie. So as it rotated, it looked like the ant was pushing it. And as a kid, it just delighted me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so see, even though he was not able to have an impressive title as the big boss who was constructing this huge refinery, okay, he was a retired man in his 50s living in his house, but I think he had more of an impact on the world with these projects that he used his blue flame to do in the home.
I think that's huge. And that's, as you're talking, I think that's what we want to give people freedom to do, right? Is to not necessarily label in a way where it has to be a job, it has to be associated to a title or a role. But at the same time, if you can connect those, it's amazing. Like you're this way, I know your blue flame involves communication. And I would love to hear specifically, because I'm guessing it's deeper than just communication, but I know for me, as I was reading your blue flame, I'm thinking, part of the do of Dream Think Do is my blue flame. Like I feel like a big reason I was put on the planet is to help other people figure out why they were put on the planet. Like I love doing that. And that involves encouragement. That involves some of the things that I get paid to do as a coach and a speaker, all of that. But I do that in my sleep, right? I could do that no matter what, right? So when you say communication is your blue flame, how do you go one step further with that, saying, is it a particular type of communication or a particular delivery mechanism of communication?
Oh, Mitch, I've never been asked that. Okay, that is actually a really great question. And you know what it is? I'm going to journal about this tonight. This is a really
Get it down
moment to me.
Be ready to write, people.
Is that so many people, especially in my demographic, I actually do have a lot of fans who are men, but let's face it, more than half of the people who follow me and come to my stand-up comedy shows are women. And what I found is and a lot of the moms, of course, and among so many women today, you'd be shocked at how many of them walk around with these pervasive feelings of guilt and of shame. It's the air that they breathe.
Yep.
And I never articulated this until you asked me this question, but I really think that that's my mission with using my blue flame of communication, is to take away that feeling of shame. And that's what I hope. And like when people come to my stand-up comedy shows, I've heard other comedians say, I just want to make people laugh. And that's never resonated with me. I obviously, I'm going to be in big trouble if they don't laugh. I definitely hope they laugh. But I want something more. And what I want them to walk out of that theater with, or when they end my podcast episode, even if, like I just told a story on my podcast of my husband calling 911 while dressed like a clown. This is not a serious podcast, but I do at the end of it want people to walk away and say, you know what? If Jen can be such a dumpster fire in her life,
right,
maybe the mistakes that I make in my life are okay, and I don't need to walk around with so much guilt and shame. And that is, you're right, that to take it a step further, that's what I want to use my blue flame to do.
Wow. I feel honored that we just got to hash that out, because I can totally see it. Like, guys, we'll put all of Jen's contact information in the show notes, but you're going to want to follow her on Instagram. You're going to want to follow her on Twitter, because that is exactly what you do. You're getting people laughing, but you're also being very real. It helps people put their guard down, helps them to be real. So I love that. I love that. Now, gosh, there's so many other areas where I want to go, but I want to go after, I know you give some very specific and actually relatively simple strategies for helping people figure out their blue flame. So if somebody said, all right, Jen, I am on board, I love it, but how do I figure it out? What's one piece of advice you'd give somebody?
Okay. Actually, it relates to your message of dream, think, do. So I bet each one of us struggle with one of those words. For some people, they might be afraid to dream. For some people, it's the execution, it's the doing. I think a lot of us, when it comes to our blue flame, it's the think that's going to trip us up. What I keep seeing over and over again is people overcomplicate this, and either they get caught up on thinking or they won't do the do part. So, I mean, really, it comes back to your message. What I want people to do is dream, think, do. So maybe a good specific thing they could start with. I have 7 exercises in the book, but if they want something they can do right now while they're sitting here listening to this podcast, I want them to make a list. What are all the things what you imagine your negative qualities to be that you beat yourself up about? Like, man, I'm just so, like, I'm a workaholic. Like, I'm just always distracted by work. Make a list of that and everything else. Now, next to each one, I want you to write down, what is the positive flip side of that? So for example, this was transformative for me in finding my blue flame, because I'm a disaster when it comes to housekeeping. I am a slob. And you can imagine how bad that got. I was a stay-at-home mom with all these little kids. I am surprised the health department didn't just shut that whole thing down. Back. And I felt guilty about it so often. But my husband was the one who pointed out, he laughed. I mean, it was such a disaster. He just laughed at it. And he said, the reason that, like, you don't even notice if there is a sink full of dishes, he said, you literally don't see it. You'll walk right past it, is because you're always up in your head with ideas. And so he said, sure, Jen, you're a slob. And he didn't mean it as an insult. I mean, it was just, you can't deny it. He's like, yeah, so you're very
That's right.
But he said, there is a major positive flip side here, which is you have 1,000 more ideas than other people. And so you have all these words and thoughts that you can share with people. And that is ultimately what led me to writing, what led me to radio, what led me to stand-up comedy, and now podcasting, is that I connected with that positive flip side of the negative quality. So that's the exercise I recommend, is list the things that you beat yourself up about. Right next to it, list what that positive flip side is. I bet your blue flame is on that list somewhere, but you got to get to the do part. You have to try. Don't think about it. Don't sit on your couch and wait till it's perfect. By the end of the day today, try something, try anything.
All right. And I'm going to do something with that concept I've never done before, where I always say, hey, read the book, buy the book, because, I'm not going to have somebody on that I don't believe in their book. But in this case, I'm going to say buy the book and buy it for somebody else, because I'm guessing that very strategy, so powerful, but like what your husband did with you and for you, was to help you see that even more. Right. And I think so buy this book and then buy a copy for somebody else, read it together, and do that for each other, because that is so huge.
I love that. Actually, I think that is such a great idea too, because so many people, they feel stuck. And if you wanted to get the book for a friend, obviously self-interest there, but even tell the friend.
I'll say it. Buy the book for somebody else. Okay, now go. Now.
Okay, so if you would suggest to someone else, say, hey, friend, I've noticed that, man, every time I go over to your house, it is beautiful and it is so well decorated. I really think this is a blue flame for you. Have you ever thought of helping out your other friends, and just, whether you charge or do it for free, just help them make their homes beautiful? I think you could really have an impact, because let me tell you, it's extraordinary what you do in your home. You have no idea how much that would help someone.
Are you kidding? I always say one of the greatest gifts we can give someone is to see them.
Yeah.
Right? And what you just said is not only just seeing them, but honoring what it is that you see. I think that is huge. So again, I wish this conversation was 4 hours. It just means you're going to have to come back. Maybe next week we'll do that. But here's the thing. What I want to do is, as we wrap this up, I'm going to give you a second to think about this question. I'm going to point people to the book, all of that. The question is, I know you've got 1,000 different ideas, but as you can imagine, dream, think, doers are busy, successful people. So they got a lot going on, but I know you have some different strategies on helping people find time to work on their blue flame, to make time for those things. So we're going to talk about a strategy or two real quick on that. I'll give you a second to think. Not that you really need it, but I'm going to, because I need the commercial break. Okay, so guys, we have been talking with Jen Fulwiler. You're going to want to check out all of her books, but especially the book, Your Blue Flame. Drop the guilt and do what makes you come alive. You can grab it on Amazon. You can go to Jen's website as well, which we'll put in the show notes, all of that. But again, the book, Your Blue Flame, drop the guilt and do what makes you come alive. Get it for you, get it for your friend, and do it together. Okay, how about that? Was that enough time?
I love it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Oh,
well pitched.
As soon as you said that, I know my answer to this.
Awesome. Let's go there.
So I think I can give people some strategies of when they do their work. Get up a little earlier, do it in the evening. But here's the thing. what I have found over and over again in my life and in other busy people's lives is, you know where the time is, you know your life.
Right.
You can, there are lots of good books about making time. The problem is that we don't value this work enough to think we deserve to make time for it. That's the problem. My
Wow.
friend who has such an extraordinary talent for baking cookies and doing these funny decorations that she did to lift up her neighbor, the problem wasn't that she could not possibly imagine how to find an hour for that.
Right.
It's that she kept saying it doesn't matter. Her husband has some big, he's like a doctor or something. So she would say, you know, my husband's out there literally saving lives. This is just so dumb. I'm just doing cookies.
Yeah, just
When she
belittle it,
started to
right?
see
Yeah.
this like, her neighbor was on the brink of despair. And when she started bringing those silly cookies over that made him laugh, I mean, he got teary-eyed. He was like, you don't know what this means to me to just have
Wow.
this. And it's what you just said, Mitch, that he felt seen
Yep.
by her
Yep.
doing this. So my number one piece of advice is dare to believe that your blue flame matters
Mm.
and is worth unapologetically making time for in your life.
What what am I supposed to do after that? Are you kidding me? Boom, drop the mic. You're done. You're out. It's over. Oh my gosh. All right, Jen, that couldn't agree more. I love it. I love it. Love the book. Your Blue Flame, Drop the Guilt and Do What Makes You Come Alive. We'll have all the ways people can find you in the show notes, but thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And thanks for taking the time today.
It's been an honor and a pleasure to be here.